Okay.
All right,
Excuse
we're
my
live.
throat.
Oh yeah, Eddie's recovering from
Yeah,
not feeling
I
well.
feel great. It's just my throat is the last remnants of what's going on.
I know. I feel so bad. So that's why
Oh, I'm
you're
okay.
a
I'm
double
good.
trooper for doing this. You're so great.
State,
So
state trooper.
so everybody, of course, people are going to start getting notifications here. But this is Eddie Brill. So we were supposed to have Melanie on, and she didn't feel well. So Eddie just said, "Hey, I'll do it," out of the kindness of his heart, and we're so grateful. I mean, can you imagine? This is incredible. He's a legend. I'm going to just read a tiny part of his bio. Just for anyone who might not recognize him, which like everyone knows your face, Eddie. Come on.
However, I want everyone to watch Eddie as the bio is being read because
Oh yeah, this is great.
no, move your hand away because this is important because self-image and what we do is part of what we're doing. So go ahead. All right,
Okay,
Renee.
all right. Let me see what he says there. For 17 years, he served as the audience warm-up comic for the Late Show with just someone we've never heard of called David Letterman.
Yeah,
you might have. I don't know if you've ever heard of David Letterman. 17 years, the warm-up comic. Okay, for 11 of those years, he was the stand-up comedy talent coordinator for the whole Letterman show. Eddie has taped more than 100 TV shows in 6 countries, including 10 appearances on the Late Night Show. And on the Emmy-nominated episode of Louie, which I love that episode, by the way. And then, of course, he's been a 3-time MAC Award winner for Outstanding Male Comic in New York City, hosted and performed for hundreds of corporate events, ESPN. It just keeps going. I mean, I could do this all day, or you could actually get interviewed. So I'm going to let you get interviewed.
Which is just go to his website, go to the website eddiebrill.com and check out all of the links, everything from there.
Stuff.
But now I get him live. I get
Tardan
him live.
treatment. The Tardan treatment is about to commence. Bye, Eddie. Good luck, boys.
You had said something, Dennis, about when someone's reading your intro, it's kind of an interesting thing and how you react to it. When I went to England for the first time to do comedy, I went up to the comedian who was hosting the show and I gave him my intro, and he looked at me in a very negative way. And I didn't understand it, and he didn't read any of that stuff or say any of it when he brought me up, and I was kind of like, what a jerk, why would he be that way? And then we got very close, and I asked him about that, and I said, what was that about? He said, well, to be honest with you, I just met you, I don't know you, and you start bragging about your career. And I says, I wasn't bragging about my career, I was giving you my intro. He says, intro? Why would you give yourself an intro? Why would you set yourself up that way? If you're funny, the audience will know you're funny, because we know a lot of comedians who get television shows who aren't that talented. Doesn't mean you're great because you have all these shows you've done. He said it's about what you do in that moment. And it was very different,
What wonderful. And that is the moment. Do you remember back in your life, like I'm 73, so I was born in 48. What year were you born?
58.
All right, 58. So during that 58 on, do you remember your connection to comedy in that time? Because let's see, all right, so 58, we would have so in the early 60s, were there still LPs?
Yeah, there were LPs, and my parents had a lot of the comedy albums, but we also watched Ed Sullivan. Excuse me. And then, when I was very young, I really loved comedy, albums, but my parents loved it. So there were a lot of LPs, and we had everything from, Smothers Brothers, Flip Wilson, all that kind of stuff. And,
sure.
And then later on, Shelley Berman and Bob Newhart and that kind of stuff. It was enjoyable to listen to them in that fashion.
How cool. And so did you get hooked by it? I mean, now, where were you geographically?
I was living in Brooklyn, New York.
All right. So Brooklyn, New York, middle class, family, multiracial.
A very poor family. We didn't have a lot of money. We were, we just had what we had, but we had a lot of love and a lot of laughter. And that was really the key to having such a great childhood, was that we didn't have a pot to piss in, but we laughed our asses off. And that was really, really fun. And my mom was very funny, really funny. My dad loved comedy, but my mother was hilarious. So in our house, it was very sarcastic, like, Eddie, take out the garbage. And I go, who, me? No, Eddie behind you. You know what I mean? You never got a straight answer. What are we having for dinner tonight? Food, like that kind of thing. Excuse my, I sound like Brenda Vaccaro. So
yeah, I know, isn't she? I love her take. Yeah.
Mhm.
Did you? All right. So then what impelled you to perform? What impelled you to begin to write and to do this?
Well, when I went to college, I went to school. I announced the football games in high school.
Yeah.
I did a Howard Cosell impression. I had moved to Hollywood, Florida by this time when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I went to South Broward High School, and I called myself Broward Cosell. And I really got a lot of publicity, which was really fun. And I enjoyed it. And my stepfather was very young. He died at 37 years old. And I was math and science guy, and I was going to go to school, MIT, early program we were shooting for. And then my stepfather died so young. I said, you know what? Life's too short. Let me do something fun that I'm enjoying. And I was writing for the newspaper, and I was local newspaper and performing, and I liked that. So I went to school for broadcast journalism, the combination. And the beginning of college,
we did the same thing.
We're the same.
I'm with you. We're the same.
Yeah. And then, well, you know the rest of the story then. No,
I don't. Actually, I don't. All right, so
I'm only kidding.
Exactly. All right, Paul Harvey and Paul and I are and which I would do. All right, but continue.
So, very early on in college, I met a bunch of men and women, young men and women who were very funny, and we all became best friends. And we formed a comedy group, and it was wildly successful. And I loved it. I got big laughs, and I loved how it felt. And it's like a drug. You get a big laugh, and you're
isn't it? I have never felt a feeling like that. That big laugh. I mean, I have. I do not like needles.
Right.
But anything else, I have tried, and I have never felt anything like that connection with an audience when you connect with them and they collectively get something that you have presented.
Yeah, we are the same person, because I don't like needles, and I've done everything possible where you don't use needles, but it still doesn't match the feeling of getting the best drug of all, which is making people laugh. It feels so good inside. It's so powerful. And it's a lot harder to make someone laugh than make them cry.
Yeah.
And, not that I try to do that, but,
sure.
It's just a process.
And now your math and science background, you don't lose that when you go into comedy, because isn't there a science and a structure to making the jokes and working them out? I mean, so we still keep our scientific perspective and scientific brain as we're going into that, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's more mathematical.
Yeah.
Music and comedy are very mathematical, and there's rhythm. Yeah. And there's rhythms, and there are not just rhythms, there are like theories, like the rhythm of three works a lot in comedy. Just the dance you have with the audience, and the nonverbal stuff that you use in comedy, which is really essential.
Oh, and then the pauses.
All right,
well, let me ask you about that, because one of the things that I always found fascinating was when I would see someone who was a great musician, like a Sinatra or Mel Torme, or any of the musicians around, when they would be able to do comedy, and I thought, well, now wait a minute. Is there a relation between being able to really to keep the beat and to work with the beats and then to do comedy? What are those? I mean, because you've seen a lot of musicians who do comedy who get a chance to come on, either to come on to Letterman or to do that. Am I on to anything there?
I mean, there's a rhythm that's so important, and you can control the rhythm of the room when you get great enough at it. You can get enough stage time. And then you have your stage legs, so you're free to move about the cabin. when you're up there. And then when you're up there, like I can get people to shut up by changing the rhythm as opposed to causing tension. Like for instance, say someone to my right is talking.
Yeah.
And it throws everything off. So I slow down and become very deliberate, and I walk in front of them, and all of a sudden there's these big pauses, and they hear themselves talk and they stop. And they realize, so you change the rhythm and you don't have to cause tension. I go, shut up, like you're ruining the show, or because that hardly works. That it's like war. You kill someone, they'll kill you back. They kill, goes back and forth. It'll just go on forever, and it'll leave a bad taste in your mouth. Sometimes it's fun to be a little bit, playful that way, but it's much more fun to be able to be left alone to do the thing you do.
Yeah. Where does your kindness come from? There's a decency and a kindness about you that I heard about you before I met you. Mm-hmm. It comes across so clearly here. What's the root of that, Eddie?
Well, that's very lovely to hear, and that you're saying. I appreciate it. I think it's about compassion, which I again learned from my mom. I grew up around a lot of women. My mom, my sister, my aunts, my cousins, mm-hmm. They all at one point babysat me, or the influence of them, and there was a lot of compassion in our family. What we lacked in finances, we made up in laughing and loving, and it was it's so much more valuable than cash. Cash is fun. It gives you some freedoms that you wouldn't have, but we would have so much fun, and we didn't need the money we didn't have the money. We had a lot of generosity. Like in my neighborhood in Florida, we were really poor because my stepfather died, and I was the oldest and working.
How old were you when that happened?
He got sick when I was 15, and I was the oldest of 5, so I ran the house at 15, and I loved it. Wow. I loved the caretaking part of it, and it really is, carried me through life. I enjoy helping others, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah.
So,
were you able to? All right. When that happened, and when that happened, and you had to take, did you lose any of that childhood experience, that growing teen experience that you had to have there? Because I was so immature at 15. If you would have done me, I would have run it right into the wall. You would have forgotten. I would not have been able to do it. You had a different path in that.
Because when you're forced to do it, you have no choice. So here I am, my mom was amazing, and the new love of her life, my stepfather was an amazing guy. And everyone was young, and she was so in love with him, and we spent a lot of time in the hospital, and I spent a lot of time raising the kids.
Right.
And eventually she came back and, was powerhouse and great and wonderful. But it was such a responsibility at such a young age. But now I'm able to be a kid when I'm older. I'm only 62, and I feel like I'm 30. I'm looking out, and I feel like I'm this very young soul with an old soul, foundation. But I look out, and I don't see what I look like except here.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
Isn't it interesting?
Pandemic face.
Yeah, we're doing.
Yeah. I said, before the pandemic, I was at the height of fashion, and now I'm at the width.
Well, we have, coming out of what was this last year? Can you talk a little about what you've learned? Because what it feels like is that we're going to be coming out of the pandemic at a different level of consciousness than we entered it. There isn't any returning. We were not going to be able to return any more than I could return before testosterone hit my brain, and then return back to that childhood. Forget about that.
You're right.
But so how do you tell me about this last year and
you
your
look
journey?
At your hand, the way your hand's going, and you know what that is? We're rocks hurtling through space. And when we bump into things, it changes our shape and shines us up a little bit. and now we're a different shape than we were last year, than we were a year ago. So, the thing that's really wonderful is like, the real thing I learned living in New York City, sitting on my stoop during the pandemic and hearing the birds sing and the animals, and it was Mother Nature was like, look, go to your room. You bad people, go to your room. You're really, really naughty, and it's time for me to clean up. And I really like that. I like that idea. I think we should do that once a month or once every couple of months. That'll never happen because, this world values money over everything.
Yeah.
We don't have representatives in government who look out for us, because when a government representative looks out for us, they get ridiculed because they know there's so much money involved. You can never gain the truth from people where money is involved. They'll never tell you the truth.
Well, let me ask you something, because that's one of the things that Renée and I are going to be working on. Renée Yaworsky, the producer director, who is in the studio, although you can't see her at this moment, but we're going to be working on and really to understand how much is enough. How have we gotten into this society where we don't know? I mean, do people know? I want to know from people. I mean, would you know it if you hit at that number?
Well,
okay.
Go ahead. You were going to continue. I was just going to say, there's such a reliance on worth being money as opposed to worth being compassionate, that people are afraid that they'll never have enough money. Mm-hmm. When people have enough money, and people who have enough money are reticent to share it because they're afraid of losing. There's a list, top 50 people on Forbes. Sure. It's important to those people to have that number on the list. And if they're not number one, they're working toward number one. It's so important. And it's a shame. I understand it, but in reality, we're the richest country in the world, and we have so many people who go to bed without, especially children, go to bed without food. That it's just, the fact that we need a civil rights leader is crazy to think about it. Civil rights should be normal. And,
exactly.
But that is civil rights leader. It's like, we're going, look, we don't have civil rights. We need people to help us. It's like, what kind of society do we live in? Haven't we learned anything where, the more we love and give and have fun, the more fun we have, the more, you gotta give up, you got to share and also be selfish at times. There's nothing wrong with that. Go for what you love, but at the same time, try not to hurt others while you're achieving this happiness.
I love the concept of enlightened self-interest. I can get the most from me by bringing out the best in you.
Yeah.
So if I invest in you, it's going to come around. There is this rising tide lifts all boats. Yeah. There is that opportunity for all of us to succeed greater. The pie continues to get greater. It is not a zero-sum game.
Yet there are people who are so afraid of that they use terms like, socialism as, they describe that as socialism, as which, and then that becomes a dirty word, and then people are like, oh my God. But the reality is, like, we were very poor. So we had the church in our neighborhood had given us food for Thanksgiving, and, we had food stamps for a while, but then we worked hard and we got out of it. So we had a bridge, thankfully, to help us make it through. And there's nothing socialist about that. We're not Chairman Mao, we're not, you know what I mean?
But you have to believe, but if they believe that, Eddie, it's because people believe that people are lazy. And that is not my experience. My experience is that people want to contribute. It's in our DNA. They want to be part of something worthwhile. Right. You just give them that opportunity. You give them the opportunity. Certainly they're going to be a percentage. Let's say if we're going to take the spectrum here, and we can say that, okay, here along the spectrum, there's a certain percentage of people who are going to game the system. But
Right.
that's the same percentage at the lower end of the economic scale as the upper. It's just
Right.
a percentage of people who are going to game the system. But the rest, not the way it is.
No,
It's
no.
just not.
But see, like, like the news on television will only show the extremists,
Thank you.
that end of the spectrum, and say that these are the bad people. Well, there are bad people on both ends of the spectrum, but you filter them out and you focus on how wonderful it is to be, good, and also be realistic and say, look, you make mistakes, but because of a lot of religion, we say mistakes are sins, and really they're not sins.
They're not.
Guilt and sins are just evil ways to control people. Guilt, first of all, doesn't exist. It's not tangible. We create it for ourselves. So the way to not be guilty is to never feel guilty.
Yes.
So you can have remorse. You can say, I'm sorry, I messed up. But have guilt, you're just putting a weight on your shoulders you don't need. And it's not a sin. A mistake is what you learn from and you grow from. So, that's why, it just makes sense. It's just because they're so busy trying to please. It's like friends of mine have said, I've given up my life for my children. Well, in reality, you've ruined your children's lives, because what you've done is you've shown your child that you give up for your child, instead of saying, look, I'm my own personality. I'm my own strength. I'm going to inspire my children by being my own person, as opposed to giving up your life for your child. Then your child gives up their life and their child gives up their life. And it's just a horrible pattern.
Eddie, that was where I was going when you started this, is that I suddenly realized that your theory of comedy is how I want to live my life. Because the minute I am living my life to please someone else rather than speaking my truth, I've lost the mission.
Yes.
I have completely gone off the rails. And it doesn't matter what business I'm in or whatever I'm going, I have lost the mission. Because even if I have a specific task to do, I can still bring my purpose to it.
Yes. How alluring is it when you see someone with their own strength? It makes you want to go to that light.
Yes.
And if someone is bringing their light down and bringing it to you because they're taking it down so that they want to match you, that's condescending.
Oh, totally. And one of the things that I love about diversity today, being able to see the divergent personalities, the different styles, all are bringing up, and the metaphor I use is a monoculture. You know how we talked about back when our grandparents we had the Dust Bowl, right? And it's because
Right.
they planted one plant, and suddenly it depleted the soil, and suddenly we had this huge thing. It almost ruined the United States. And that is a monoculture, this white male monoculture that we had. Now suddenly, in order to make the world has gotten so complex that we need a diversity of thought at the table. And we need a diversity of perspective at the table. And now we're seeing it with the LGBTQ. We see women rising up into a leadership. We see men stepping up to be able to like you and me, like we're working to be able to work on ourselves, knowing that we're here to bring our best at this time. So I love that diversity, the diversity that we get a chance to experience today.
And at the same time, we're all humans. So, that's the other part of it. The diversity is so important, but at the same time, we're all humans. And that's the key, is to really be your most compassionate, person to all humans, and not look at humans, like I was in Florida recently. It was funny. This is going to not get me a lot of fans, but I was down in Florida, and it was such a white supremacist kind of society.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, that's so unfair that the white supremacists get the palm trees and the beaches. They don't deserve it. They don't deserve that, those beaches, and that goes, against the humanity of it. But when people are so afraid of giving up their identity, which is, one of being leaders without compassion, it just throws me off. There's nothing lovely or
Nothing.
nothing.
There is nothing, and this gives us an eye because it cuts me off from my humanity. The instant I make an other, the instant I'm having to do it and to protect something, to try to be able to protect, I lose everything that is wonderful about who I am and who we can be as part of this wonderful conglomeration of people and of opportunities that were there. This is, to me, Eddie, this is a time when they're going to look back on it, historians, and a time when we're making a change. We're actually evolving into who we could be because we're evolving in our consciousness. We're seeing what's possible that is beyond what you and I thought was possible.
Right. And, it's just like cancel culture, for instance, this big bullying that's going on where people are taking people down, hiding behind cameras, when instead of celebrating how people are evolving, they're looking back in their past to see and destroy people based on what they've said, like in the past before they learned anything. Like my mom, grew up in a house where her parents were, her mother was kind of racist, and my mother broke free of that very young and had an incredible life and taught us, about love and compassion. But, my mom at one point in her life, maybe when she was 13, had this, horribleness, but instead of looking back at that and going, oh, she was so bad at that point, go look at how she evolved as an incredible human. But people are so insecure and so scared, and it's our society we have to blame for it. This, the news and the news that's run by money. We don't get the news. We get 22 minutes of advertising. That's what television is. Television is advertising with TV shows in between.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So can you talk a little about the concept of redemption? Because we're one of the pieces that we're working on that we're going to be doing is we're going to have a panel on Jeffrey Toobin and on what does redemption look like. So how does like Louis C.K. how do we as a society deal with redemption in the 21st century so that we grow? I certainly did stupid shit. I'm talking about stuff that just for the grace of God, I didn't get caught. Stuff that I did, and that certainly in that and so how do we redeem? How do we get a chance to come back?
It's so hard because we're capable of it if we want it. But, like when you grow up and you hear that masturbation is bad, Jeffrey Toobin made a big mistake. It was a horrible mistake for him. He's in a business where you need to understand who he is. But if you can't talk about masturbation and make people realize that it's not a sin,
right?
When you make it a sin, then you bring all of this, baggage to the story that has nothing to do with the story. Matter of fact, I've been talking a lot more about masturbation on stage, not trying to talk about it, or the act of it, but how we respond to it. Like when I was a comic I'm still a comic. When I was at a
your prime, yes.
Yeah. Now is my prime. Actually, it gets better and better. That's one thing that people don't understand. Comedy is the one industry where the older you are, the better you are, because you get more stage time. So people who are in charge, who are not savvy, look at old people as they push them out to the side, and it's really short-sighted, and it's a real idiocy. I understand you don't want only old comics. You want comics who are 20 and 15 and 30 and 40 and 50 and all the things. But you got to realize when someone like Phyllis Diller or Milton Berle or somebody 70, 80, 90 doing comedy, they're the best. And that's one job where you get better as you get older. But we were talking about going all over the place in this, and I'm trying to bring me
That's right.
back to.
All right. So we were talking about masturbation.
Okay, so here's a scenario. I'm in this comedy condo where I was staying, and I heard the other comedian before I met him masturbating in the bathroom behind the wall where I was, and I didn't want to hear that. It wasn't a choice that I had, and it was kind of like I personally was turned off by it. So later that night, he's the host of the show, and he introduces me, and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Brill," and he puts his hand out, and I wouldn't shake his hand, and I don't know why. I don't know why. I mean, probably everybody in that audience masturbated that day, and if they didn't, they were foolish because it would, they've ruined. They had a chance to.
You lost the day.
Yeah, they lost the day, and so I would shake anyone's hand in the audience because I didn't hear them masturbate. There are certain scenarios where you hear someone masturbate and then you really want to shake their hand, but it's just funny how there's such a blight on it that me personally, I had this moment where I wouldn't shake his hand because that was the hand he masturbated with, or possibly.
Are you right or where you go? Are you right or left-handed?
Right-handed.
No, I mean, did you ask the guy? I mean, you'd want to know. I mean, that would be. Are you a righty or a lefty? And how does that work? Yeah,
sometimes it's fun to use, either or to.
Exactly. I mean, you want to be flexible. You want to be versatile.
Literally,
yes, exactly. Yeah, I was.
But but people freak out about the subject.
Yeah.
When you hear masturbation, people freak out, which is so ridiculous because if you talked about oral sex, you talked about kissing. You talk about anything, people don't freak out as much.
No.
It's just what we're taught in religion class, that masturbation is a sin and you're going to go to hell. And, it's just that kind of thinking and that kind of evil, that's used to control people. It's just, there's no good in that. There's not a titch of good in that. And that causes the kind of things that happen later in your life where there's a stigma to something that's beautiful.
Sure. I mean, you have to know that that somebody who's sitting there on the ground in the telemetry of the from the space station is sitting there looking at the telemetry from the heart monitor and this of the astronaut and going, oh yeah, he's doing that now. Because there's got to be telemetry. I mean, because they're hooked up to that. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well, wait.
But it goes back to what say is a sin, and the word sine in Latin means mistake. So if you make a mistake, it's nothing wrong. The key is to learn from your mistake. The key is to not be ridiculed for making a mistake. The key is to I've made a mistake, but I have the best intentions.
Exactly. One of my teachers, Jesse Jennings, talks about mistake as an archery term, is that it's missing the mark, and that you took a shot, you pulled it, you gave it a shot, you let go, you missed the mark. And the best way, instead of what you were saying earlier, instead of and lamenting and hitting myself and being all guilty, just take another goddamn arrow, take it, and let another one fly closer to the mark.
That's the same thing in the Latin term. Is pretty much sine is the archer's shot.
Is it? Oh, yeah. So what is Eddie? Tell me some of the things that are in your windshield. Some of the things that are making you curious today and excited about being in the prime that you're doing right now.
It's really about uncovering the truth, because we've been lied to so much every day, over and over and over again, that we're lied to, and people just jump on their lies and back them up and double down on them. And it's just so just so evil. It's just so sad and so horrible.
Short-sighted. It's short-sighted.
Yeah. Let's uncover the lies. Even if they're uncomfortable truths, let's live through them and learn from them. I want to know the truth. You can't handle the truth. It's like, how do you know? I can handle the truth. Even if it's shocking or weird, I'd rather know the truth, and that I just don't get the lying, and I don't get how it's so attractive. And it's just, look what we do. We run away from everything because they're trying to scare us all the time.
Right.
So we live in a house that is in a gated community. There's a fence around our house. There's a dog in the yard between the fence and the front door. The front door has locks and an alarm system, and everyone's hiding and ordering food in and watching reality television, which isn't real, and pointing and laughing instead of living their own lives. And
Thank you.
So why can't we live our own lives? Why can't we make mistakes? Why can't we have fun? Why can't we be silly? Why can't we be friends, as the song says by War?
And we do that, and the other part of that, Eddie, that I'm very interested in is, what are the lies that I am telling myself?
Yeah.
Like, for example, that I'm much smaller than I really am. I'm not really effective. I'm the lies that I tell myself about myself are the things that I'm exploring deeply right now, because those are pernicious. Those end up meaning that I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to show up or go on stage, or I'm not going to show up to be able to do it because I sit back and I tell myself, oh, well, you're not really, instead of stepping up and being willing to make a mistake.
Like you said at the very beginning of this interview, watch Eddie respond to his bio being read.
Exactly.
Is that whole thing. Why am I covering up that? I just, that's who I am. That's what I've done. A bio doesn't tell everything about me. It's just it's kind of a surfacey reading of what I've done. But why do we act that way? Why am I so judgmental? Like, I had an early bit in my act about, making fun of these Canadians who were in Florida when I was a kid, and these beautiful wives and fat, short husbands with Speedos. And I realized later on in life that I was jealous. And once I realized I was jealous, that's how I became judgmental. I was judgmental because I was jealous. And then I said, the joke ended up being, instead of like, how are these women with these men? Is it because they have a lot of money, or maybe they're just nice guys and not judgmental fools like I am?
And, how wonderful.
So that vulnerability is the strength in comedy. And it, even if your whole act is about everybody sucks but me, it's the whole idea of having it come back and bite you in the ass every once in a while.
Yes, because if we do that certainly is the way. So the comedians that so how are you writing today? What are the things that you write about? What's your writing process and your creative process?
There's all different ones. The best way is to come up with an idea and bring it to the stage and play, because I have those stage legs that I said. There's a whole bunch of different plans that I have, but I'll give you an example of a writing thing I did, and I've used this before in workshops that I've talked to young comedians about. I wrote a joke, and here's how I wrote it. I'm just going to say it like I read it. I said, why do Adam and Eve have names? They're the only two people on earth. They don't need names. It was probably Adam's idea. And he's like, I want to have names. You're going to be Eve. I'm going to be Adam. And she goes, why do we have names? If I'm not saying something and I hear somebody, it's you. So that was the way I wrote it. So now I go back to what I wrote. And the first line was, why do Adam and Eve have names? So what I do is like, I'm asking a question and coming from a very weak position, as opposed to making a statement and coming from a position of power. So I changed the line to, I've often wondered why Adam and Eve have names. It changes the whole trajectory. The power of that statement is not, I need your help, but here's the way I think. The second line needs a pause of a nonverbal thing, like, so the audience can think that too. I've often wondered why Adam and Eve have names, and the audience is like, yeah, why do they have names? And then I go, they're the only two people on earth, like flabbergasted. And now I don't need the next line. They're they don't need names. So I took that line out. And my next line was, it was probably Adam's idea. And like, then you got to think about it. How do I know is probably Adam's idea. I wasn't there, so I changed it to perhaps it was Adam's idea. And the reason why I made it about Adam is because if you look at the way our Bible was written, it was written mostly by misogynistic men who were insecure, or at least it appears that way to me.
Sure.
God's a man, his son's a man, Adam is the man. Without a rib, you wouldn't have Eve. Eve's the bitch for eating the apple, but Adam ate the apple. Adam has an Adam's apple. You know what I mean? The women give birth. You know, these men are insecure and jealous. It appears as why they're. So I made Adam a dickhead in the bit. So when I go, perhaps it was Adam's idea, I go, all right, baby, this is how it's going to work. I'm going to have names, and I'm going to be Adam. I'm going to call you Eve. So what does a woman do in that situation? She's in charge, and she goes, really? One word, boom, really? Like puts him down immediately and goes, look, if I hear somebody, you know, saying something and it's not me, it's you. So now what does a guy do when he's had all this bravado and gets knocked down? He's going to try a sweet way to get his way. He's going to change his tone. So I have him go, come on, baby. I want to have names. And she goes, really? Boom, knocks him down again and says, I want to see other people, but... And then that's how that joke formed, out of taking the truth and not making assumptions, which is a huge thing, and you know, saying, look, and then putting a character in the truth behind my truth behind it. Now, other people might not see the Bible as misogynistic. To me, it's pretty obvious in a lot of the stories.
Right.
It was written by insecure men.
Right. And it's a one perspective. Do you, are you going out to, on this end of the COVID, are you going out to clubs, getting some stage time, getting out now? Tell me what looks like for your next few weeks, month. How are you looking at it?
I'm starting to get gigs booked for, I got gigs in August, September, and October. I've done 2 gigs recently, and it was spectacular to just be back on stage.
Oh, Eddie.
I did 1 gig in New York, and it was real. I was a little nervous, and I never get nervous for a minute, like, oh my God, how is this going to work? And it was great. And I couldn't sleep that night because I was so wired. And then I was in Florida, and I did a gig. And the owners of the theater that I was working at were very disrespectful, and they weren't funny comedians, but they forced themselves on the show, which was already too long on a Friday night. Because if you know if you know about comedy, that Friday night, the later you perform, the more tired people are from a work week. So you try to have a shorter, tighter, better show. So there was already 6 comics on the show, but the first guy who I didn't meet, who wasn't on the list of comics, goes up and not only doesn't do his time, he goes way over his time and is not funny. And I'm steaming mad because this guy is disrespecting the show, meaning I have to go on 15 minutes later than I was supposed to on a Friday night. And the other comedians were having to go late. So just when I was going to go backstage and tell this guy, look, why would you disrespect your fellow comics and the show for your ego? And the MC goes, that was the owner of the club. It's like, okay, well, he's writing my check, so I better be nice. So, and I remember meeting a woman that was the owner. She was very nice. And so these other comics go on and stick to their 5 minutes, and they're doing their set, because I'm going to do 45 minutes. And then all of a sudden, this woman who was the other owner, I guess they were married, went on stage. And instead of doing 5 minutes, she did like 15, 17 minutes and was really just mediocre. And so the 2 owners, because of their ego, I still had a great time, but it just shows you the kind of disrespect that people have for others. Like, if they wanted to be on the show and do a half hour between them, they should have only booked like 1 or 2 other comics.
Right.
But they just said, here's our stage. We own it. We don't give a shit about, what's best for the show. We own this place. We're going to run it the way we want to, and not tell the other comics what they're doing. It was really disrespectful, but you know what? Their place, their venue, it was a nice little venue. I had a great time, but it would have been 1,000 times more powerful if those people didn't, their egos didn't get in the way of our great show.
I love the idea. One of the things that I admire about you, Eddie, and I would love to have a continued conversation as we're seeing what happens in the next year or so, and what ideas will be occurring to you, is the amount of respect that you have for the business, and the amount of respect that you have for this opportunity to be able to get in front of people, in front of that stage. For that is a holy time. That is a time where there, because I found the comedians that I most respect are the ones who respect the audience, who respect the intelligence of the audience, who bring them with them, that they talk and get an opportunity to be able to have a shared experience.
You know, for me, thinking about anything, if you respect the scenario you're in, the scenario will respect you back.
Thank you.
You can't help it. And that's the key, is to respect yourself,
yes.
Which I do very much. There are times I don't, like during the pandemic, I'm overweight, not comfortable with it. That is a whole different other thing where you have to love yourself and treat yourself really well.
Yep.
So now that's what I'm focused on again. So
how wonderful.
So what I need to do is to look at respect in every aspect of it.
Yes.
Respect others and myself. Someone
exactly.
very wise once told me, I said, I'm such a caretaker and I have such pleasure in it that I don't have enough time to be good to myself. And she goes, that's bullshit. With a Brooklyn accent, it's bullshit, she said.
Bullshit.
She said, why don't you be one of the people you take care of? And it was like, okay, makes sense.
If it's going to be, it's got to be all part. It's either an all game, either everybody gets to play or it doesn't work.
Right.
Which means I have to include myself, and I have to include myself in that.
Right.
In
but
that
at the
piece.
same time, if you have a game and you're only allowed to have 7 people in the game and there's 10 people around, you have to understand that only 7 people are going to get this. It's not because you're disrespected, but it's because of, the work you put in.
Yep. And
if you put the work in, you'll probably be one of the 7.
Yeah.
Unless somebody with an ego gets in the way and they're acting like they're in junior high school and you're picking teams and, based on who someone is on the outside as opposed to who they really are on the inside. So there's a lot of that. But sometimes you have to say, okay, look, I have to sit this one out, because that's if you and I said, you know what, let's do this for 24 hours. Let's be on this StreamYard for 24 hours. The other people who are on this show, this network, would not get on that. And we'd be respectful to that scenario.
Yep. And that's what
we felt deserved to do all 24 hours. It's not about that.
No. And it's not about Eddie, thank you for giving me this time today. Thank you for not only for jumping in, because I've wanted to have this. You were like someone that Renée and I had talked about, we're going to get a chance to have Eddie Brill, and this is thank you for opening up and being for being so open and vulnerable about your own journey and your own path and what we're doing and what we're all doing here on this path. Because if it's one thing that I know is that we're all on this blue marble, and we better get along, and we better find some ways to be able to be compassionate toward others and compassionate toward ourselves, because there ain't this is it. This is it. And this is our time to be able to do it.
Even Bukowski, who is the darkest MF in the world, and I can't believe it said MF. I would never normally say that. I just see television on my brain shuts off from saying what I really want to say. But he even said, look, don't people get it? You only, there's a short time on earth, and why not love each other? Look at the garden.
Yep.
You see a garden and it's all different flowers, and they grow together and they blossom together and they bloom and they help each other out by sharing the soil and fertilizing the soil. And why can't we be this garden where there's all different colors? Who's the first person who said, well, if your skin is a different color, you're an idiot, or
Yep.
or really what you're saying is I'm an idiot for thinking that.
Exactly. It's all victimhood. It's all projection
Mm,
of my own insecurities on someone else, because I have never known an arrogant person that was not arrogant out of smallness,
right.
that wasn't
And look at
arrogant
advertising.
out of insecurity and about fear about their own selves. Because any person that I have seen that has the kind of generosity, like the generosity that you're expressing, is secure in who they are first, even with our own fallibilities, even with our own challenges, even with our own, we are secure in who we are, and then we step out there with our voice.
Yeah, and look at advertising, how like I have gray hair and it's who I am,
Is
but this
that really nice?
advertising,
Is that really nice to talk?
yeah,
Really, I would
but
love to
but
have gray hair. I would
right, of
love to
course,
have.
it would be great. I would love to have thick, long hair like I used to have, but this is what I'm given. And there are commercials that say you're a loser and no one's going to have sex with you because you have gray hair, just for men,
What?
or no one's going to have sex with you, which is what they use in every commercial, sexuality, if you have zits. So here,
Yep.
put the cream on your face and make it worse than it already is, because we have the answer for you. And people believe it because when they hear it in a deep voice and it's on television, and they don't realize that it's just sad. It's sad how advertising is built on cutting us down to the point where we
Right.
need their product in order to think that we're sort of okay,
Exactly.
when we've been okay the whole time, and your product actually works against anything that's good and right and human.
Yeah, exactly. Eddie, I am going to ask you, and I apologize for doing this on the air, but I'm going to tell you anyway that please, we have another conversation down the road. What you've learned, you're going to be a different person down the road because you will have learned so much. One of the things that I love about you is that you are a learning human being, that you have not arrived. You are in the process. This is one of the problems I have with the word woke, is because I'm not woke, I'm waking, because each day I learn more. I learn more today about my own conscious and unconscious biases than I possibly could have learned yesterday. So I can't imagine what I'm going to be learning tomorrow. So
I love you more today than yesterday, but not as half as much as tomorrow.
That's the theme music for today. And thank you, Eddie Brill. Thank you so much,
It's such a
my new
pleasure to meet
friend.
you. I'm glad it worked out. I
All
really
right. Thanks for taking